Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Cedar Falls Board of Education meeting with a reminder that the actions taken this evening will focus on our students and their achievement. With that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? It's been moved by Jeff Orvis. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Sasha Walport. Do I have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on now to communications. Is Rachel here? Rachel, come on up. This is Rachel Brokenshire, and she's coming up. She's our high school representative this year. And look what we have on the floor over here for you, Rachel. Rachel?
Over here.
Over here. Cans.
Oh, yay. Oh, perfect.
Oh, and kids,
Okay,
but
I thought I
cans.
was
So you get to take the cans.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yes, at the high school right now, the big thing is the food drive. Yay. And so just an overview, food drive every year, the Northeast Iowa Food Bank, we partner with them, all the schools in the Cedar Valley area. And Cedar Falls always does a great job, and we are looking forward to just providing food again for the food bank. And so there's 3 ways this year to do it, or to contribute. So the typical way that you think of is you can bring cans, which is awesome, and bring food, but also for the last couple of years, you've also been able to just give money, and that works really well because $1 actually equals 4 meals, just because they're able to like buy in bulk, and that just works really well. And so people are encouraged to do that. And then the third way this year that is new and exciting is you can volunteer at the food bank, and 1 hour for one person or a student is actually equals 100 meals that goes for that school. And so that's a big one this year, so we're going to try and get out and volunteer. But I have some things that we're also doing to help with the food drive. And so our first big thing that is this Wednesday, October 16th from 5 to 8 is at Chick-fil-A. So this is a perfect excuse to go eat some really good food. Everything there is so good. And so if you go from 5 to 8 again this Wednesday, 15% of all the proceeds will go to the CF food drive. And so a big thing is you have to say you are part, like, I am with the CF food drive. And if you do that, then that'd be awesome. And 15% of all the proceeds will go, and you'll get a great meal. So awesome. And then we have our Powder Puff volleyball game, so that will be interesting. That is on Tuesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. in the gym, so that will be interesting. And that's a monetary donation or canned food items for admission. So that, again, is on Tuesday, October 22nd. And then we have our Trunk or Treat, and that is going to be on Sunday, October 27th from 1 to 3. And so us high school students, we're trying to channel our creative side, so we're going to decorate our car trunks, and then we encourage families to come with their kids, and they can come trick-or-treating down at the CF parking lot, and we'll have candy and maybe some games, and you'll get to meet the high schoolers, woohoo. And so, yeah, and there is motivation for the high school students. The winners will get, of the trunks, will get to have like a percentage of the donations that come from that. So to come to Trunk or Treat, we encourage either a monetary donation, or you can do just bring canned foods. And the winners of that will get to put that towards our 3rd hour class. And so the winner of the 3rd hour class gets a donut party. So we are all very motivated. And so there's that. And then also this year we have a can redemption. And so you can bring in your empty cans to the Can Redemption Center on University. And so all you have to do is make sure it has a tag with the Cedar Falls Food Drive. And that's a really awesome way that will also go to the food drive. And then finally, we are encouraging students to, again, be creative, and they can make hand sculptures in the Tiger Den. And so that's another way that we are just trying to get people to get involved in the food drive. And yeah, it'll be a fun month. It'll go until early November. So that's what's going on.
Questions for Rachel?
Rachel, can you tell us who we would make checks to, or how we would get checks to help support the food drive?
I can't tell you
Or
about checks.
Is there a place that we could go to look some of this up?
Maybe the high school office is
Thank you.
what I can
Thank you.
tell you.
Any other questions?
I think from past experience at Cedar Falls High School.
Okay.
Yes. I was ready for that.
There we go. You knew that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Okay,
Absolutely.
and we will help you get these to the high school, so you don't have to
Okay,
worry about that,
perfect,
okay?
Perfect.
All right.
Hello, kids, too. I mean,
Thank you. Now Janelle Darsh will be up, our communications report tonight.
Good evening. I think she wasn't sure what a check was, Jeff. I think actually. If you would have said, how do I Venmo it, Rachel? Then she would have been all over it, but she didn't quite know. Starting off tonight, I just wanted to congratulate these students. They were recognized through the National Merit Scholarship Program. Renee Plasman and Ryan Westoff were chosen as semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program, and they continue on in the competition. And then Siddhartha, Kalala, Krisha, Kieran, Devin O'Laughlin, and Annika Strom were named commended students, and that was based on their performance on the PSATs. So big congratulations to all of them. Also wanted to mention Representative Finkenauer visited the CAPS program last Thursday, and she was able to have a great conversation with the students and then also some of the instructors, talk a little bit about some of the legislation that she's working on that could have some positive impact for us, which was great to hear. It was a really great conversation. She talked a lot about how she wished these kinds of programs were there for her when she was in high school and was really supportive of it. And you would have been immensely proud of our students. They handled themselves in such a professional way, and that was definitely the main thing she commented on when she was there that day. So we're glad she was able to visit with the students. Wanted to congratulate the Tiger Marching Band. They earned a Division I rating from all 6 judges at the State Marching Band Festival this last Saturday, even through the cold, believe it or not. So that's a pretty big thing for them, so congratulations. Lincoln Elementary had their walk to school day. This is something that quite a few buildings across the district do. So this, I believe it's coordinated with Crystal Kowalty, the PE teacher at Lincoln, and she connects with UNI athletes and then Blackhawks hockey players. And they had 2 groups that walked, one from Clay Street and then one from Sartori Park, and both of them to Lincoln Elementary. So that was a great event that Crystal put on. They had great weather for that day. Also, Southdale Elementary participated in the walk, and they walked to their partner of education, Hy-Vee. So that is the entire school of Southdale. It takes a while for them to get there and cross the streets, but they block the streets off so they can all get down there, and then they're able to get a treat from Hy-Vee a healthy treat from Hy-Vee before they then head back to Southdale. Wanted to just introduce real quick, this is our Green Iowa AmeriCorps employees that'll be working for and with the district this coming up the school year for sustainable schools. Christy Boyle is the energy efficiency coordinator, and Teresa Morse is the education and outreach coordinator. As you can see on the right, they've actually been put to work planting the trees that the North Cedar elementary students were a part of, which was the 2nd round of planting trees in North Cedar this year. So they've already been put to great work. There are a ton of ideas across the district of how we can be more sustainable in our buildings. So they're meeting with everyone, kind of figuring out the things that we're able to maybe tackle, things that maybe aren't able to do right now, and they'll be putting their plan together for the year. This is the garden club from Holmes Junior High. During Tiger Time, again, the students get to pick things that they're passionate about or have interest in. And this was actually, they have a garden at Holmes as well. So they were able to use some of the herbs and tomatoes from that garden to then make their own pizzas. This is Pete Junior High in one of their science classes, the 7th grade science, working on kinetic energy and building roller coasters. Barry Plasman was awarded the 2019 Friend of Science Award from the Iowa Science Teachers, and he was nominated by Mr. Jim Duff for all of his volunteer work with the Holmes Junior High Science Club. So we very much appreciate Mr. Plasman's volunteering, and then of course, Mr. Duff for taking the time to nominate him. Also wanted to mention, this is our first year. We actually have a girls rugby team, and they're hosted their first tournament, and they actually, I believe, tonight are having another tournament right now. But it's a great activity. You can see lots of girls are involved in it, and it's something that's been really successful this first year. A CF grad, Drew Stensland, I believe he was the first student board rep here for board meetings a handful of years ago. He's actually working at the Capitol now, and our 5th graders from Hanson were there touring the Capitol, so he was able to say a quick hi to them. It's always kind of fun to see our alums and current students connecting. Brian Enru, our instructional technology coordinator, has been putting together makerspace kits that are going out to all of the buildings in elementary and then secondary as well. And he's even conducting some contests across the district for students to basically take those items and see if they're able to make something based on what they have in the kits, and then they'll be judged and be awarded for those. These Aldrich second graders are learning about different types of communities through the Google Expeditions. The technology instructional coaches use those in many of the classrooms across the district. Also wanted to mention our own Andrew Moreland. He's a sophomore at the high school. He was chosen as a kid captain for the University of Iowa football game recently, and it was pretty neat. So at the actual high school, the University of Iowa rep was there, so they actually did their own wave. And if you go to the Cedar Falls High School Counseling Department Facebook page, you can see the video there of Andrew and the others taking part in the wave there at the high school. We've had a lot of work happening for the planning of the new Cedar Falls High School. We had the boards that you see on the left were actually at the home football game in September, and then they were at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. Lots of great community conversation and input. And then we've had the ones on the right, those have been at the high school for the students to give their input on in one area, and then another area for the teachers to give their input on. So all of this information is going to be compiled and put together for the committee that's working moving forward with the high school, but it was really great to see so many people interested in giving some input. And then wanted to mention Mr. Mark Monter. He retired on October 4th after 42 years of service to the district. 26 of those, I believe, were at Hanson Elementary. And this is at the very end of the hallway at Hanson, and he had a 5-minute going away high five down the halls. And if you know Mr. Monter, he seems like a pretty stoic, kind of quiet guy, and he's kind of like a big teddy bear. So he was very emotional, but Hanson did an amazing job of thanking him, like the weeks leading up to this, and then giving him an amazing send-off. So we really thank Mr. Monter for all of his years of service to the district. And then we have an event coming up on Monday, October 28th. This will be our second Let's Talk Mental Health community conversation. It's being planned by our school counselors at the secondary level primarily. It'll be starting at 5:30 up at the high school. There's different sessions. You can see the time frames kind of break down with vendors and the keynote. We're really excited to have Joan Becker as the keynote speaker this year. So it'll be, I think, really beneficial evening for anyone that can attend. There's no registration, and it's a free event, so we encourage everyone to come. And there's all the social media where you can check it all out on your own. Any questions?
Any questions for Janelle?
Just wondering if we can either get involved in judging the makerspace competition or have the winners come and present to us, especially with the secondary. I'd like to see, I mean, you know, kids are going to be creative, but I'd love to see what those high schoolers are doing with the makerspace.
Yeah, I
kits.
think the current competition is making an instrument out of the, but
It
yeah,
is.
we can definitely work on that.
It's making an instrument out of just makerspace materials, and there was a lot of discussion. Do we want to have a winner from each of the classes or grade levels or even buildings? And right now, that's still up in the air. We have not decided if we're going to actually have a winner. It's mostly going to be just the learning, the creativity, and then posting those
I was wrong.
videos at the end.
There's not a winner, Jenny.
So,
Well, I like that even
come
better,
back.
but I'd love for them to come and present some of the things they made, just so, you know, we could show the community what makerspace is all about and things
I
like
think
that.
that'd be tremendous. Not only that, but also potentially some of the videos that we can push out with permissions, of course, to be able to showcase just the creativity that our students have.
Good idea.
I do know that one of the things that we celebrate in Makerspace are not just the successes, but we also celebrate the failures, that those are an important part of the Makerspace philosophy.
Yeah, good comment. Any other questions for Janelle? Thank you, Janelle. We're going to move on to public comment for tonight. Dr. Patty?
Yeah, I just had a few comments to make, and I apologize. I had to write down some of my thoughts ahead of time. But first off, thanks for everybody for being here. It's important to see the turnout and the support that's in this room for a large percentage of our student population, and certainly students within our audience tonight. I think most people are in attendance regarding the event at Pete that took place several weeks ago. One of the things that I want to make sure that everybody understands, we did not follow our school policy regarding that activity, and for that, I am really sorry. As superintendent, that responsibility falls on my shoulders, and we will do much better into the future. As we look into the future, events such as the one that did take place at Pete, can be held, provided that the policy expectations are met in full. And again, we'll have our building principals review those. I think for me, the most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching part of this is the fact that we had a group of students, many of our LGBTQ plus students, that didn't feel supported. And that's hard to be able to state. And again, that's for multiple different reasons. And for that, I am truly sorry. What was lost in this event was the lack of a strong statement by the district early on to say we support our students who identify as LGBTQ plus, and that is something we. And again, I apologize for that. The foundation of the event to show kindness, support students, welcoming is something that it's really one of our foundational pieces as a district, and it's what we do as a district. I've had a lot of different questions, a lot of different conversations over the last several weeks, and this is one of the components that I always put out there. The differences that we have between us all is really what makes us unique and uniquely special individuals, and I think that's important. The common denominator that we all have is that we're human beings, and as humans, we have to treat each other with dignity. We have to be supportive. We have to make sure that we are kind and always act with civility, and that is one of the tenets that should be something that we all value and all strive to be. We do know that we have several people this evening for public comment, and I always kind of go back to that last sentence. Civility is the most important aspect, especially in a public forum. We ask that you do not use individual names. We ask, again, that you stay within the 3 minutes of time frame, and we certainly always ask everybody to act with dignity, with kindness and support for one another, because that's something, again, we very much pride ourselves on. It's not a dialogue between audience members and board members. I just want to make sure I remind everybody of that. This is an opportunity for a public comment, not necessarily a discussion or a dialogue. Again, thanks for attending. We appreciate everybody being here. We apologize for not following our policies and certainly not seeing us supporting all of our students, but in this case, especially our LGBTQ plus students. So I'll pass it to Joyce.
Okay, I'd just like to say a couple of words. As the board, it's our responsibility to set and approve policy. One of our board's strong beliefs is that we support all students toward their educational success, which includes the LGBTQ plus students. We are here to listen this evening. We greatly appreciate all of you that have attended and all of you that have been out to support our community and our students. And back to Dr. Patty's first statement, we are a community and we need to accept each other with tolerance, kindness, and be there to be supportive. So I appreciate Dr. Patty for his willingness to come out and talk about just the mistake that we made as far as a district by not supporting our policies and not coming out strongly in support that next day. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So moving forward, we're going to ask the first speaker to come up, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. It's going to be Ben. That's why I'm looking at him. 3 minutes to speak. We have a timer. The first, it's going to be green, and you'll have 2.5 minutes in green, and then it's going to go 30 seconds into yellow, and then it'll turn red, and then your time will be up. So if you wouldn't mind coming up to the mic, telling me your full name, telling us your full name, and your address.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So my name is Ben Christensen, and I live at 1822 Grand Boulevard in Cedar Falls. So good evening. My name is Ben Christensen, as I stated, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm speaking today as a Cedar Falls Schools alum, class of 2016, and as someone who came out within the transgender and queer communities while attending Pete Junior High. Through many discussions with the school, it appeared a dialogue was beginning to open, and support for LGBTQ+ students appeared visible. When I graduated, there was little sustainable programming, but I left with the hope that our CF school administration, school board, counselors, and faculty will continue to support and help LGBTQ+ students by creating safe spaces at all levels of Cedar Falls schools. I'm grateful to those staff and administrators who supported my journey, and I want to thank all the teachers and counselors who reached out with open support. That being said, our community has a big opportunity in responding to the homophobic reaction to this donut pop-up. I believe we can all agree that we are having these discussions because we care deeply about our students' well-being. Regardless of people's intentions, children's actual lives are being affected and are going to be affected by how this is handled. Although this donut pop-up was an inclusive event for students, the organizers need not deny that this event was intended to show support for our LGBTQ+ students. Leaning into this truth is positive. The school district should be proud to acknowledge an event openly showing support for the LGBTQ+ students at Pete after an overt and violent act of homophobia against a student earlier this fall. Don't feel ashamed to openly support your LGBTQ+ students. Disavowing blatant acts of violent homophobia is appropriate. Supporting your LGBTQ+ students is not partisan, it is decent. It is about providing a safe space for learning, not just subjects such as math or reading, but about oneself and how one fits into the world. It is not enough to simply write words and policies and state that CF schools are inclusive to everyone. There needs to be overt actions made by the administration, the school board, teachers, and counselors. This should be the first of many sustained dialogues surrounding issues of identity at Cedar Falls schools. This is the chance to finally begin to develop sustainable programming that will instill a sense of community while ensuring safety for our students. We can do better. We must do better. Lean in. Even though discussions may be uncomfortable and some questions may not have quick or simple answers, this should not deter us. Rather, let us lean into this discussion and encourage continued dialogue on where we can do better for students. Thank you for your time and for all the hearts that are invested in this.
Thank you, Ben. I didn't see him walk in, but is Chris Schwartz in the room? Okay, moving on. Tim Purdom, if you would come up to the mic, please.
Hi. Did you want name and address? And
Please.
rank and serial? Tim Purdom, 2304 Franklin Street. I'm a former teacher and parent of a student at Pete. Thank you for giving us the time to speak here. Statistically, there's probably 250 LGBTQ plus students in our district right now. And that's makes it probably the largest minority group in our schools. Now, I know, going way back to childhood, I did not choose to be straight, and I do not believe that any people choose their sexual orientation or their gender identity. This is common sense, and if you talk to people in this community, they'll tell you the same. But it's also backed up by scientific evidence and every major medical and scientific group in this country. So this isn't really about belief or agendas. It's part of who they are. And we can't tolerate bullying and discrimination on that basis. Celebrating diversity in our schools can and should be something that's a common practice. When I taught in Waterloo, we had every year special events for Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month. And when I go to a music concert here in Cedar Falls, I'm often presented with music from all around the world, from different cultures. And that kind of celebration makes students from different backgrounds feel more included and feel more a part of our community. I just saw recently over in Madison, Wisconsin, they just celebrated this past week the National Coming Out Day with a video from the school district featuring LGBTQ plus students interviewed. And it's a really remarkable video, and I encourage you to look it up on the Wisconsin Public School website and share that, because it's a really good model of how we could have dialogue with those students and also lead forward. The bottom line is that the statistics that the LGBTQ plus students are more likely to be bullied and therefore more likely to commit suicide or have other negative life outcomes than the rest of our school population. By simply being open and public about our support for them as who they are, we make a world of difference, especially for those 250 kids. I hope to see continued effort by our school district to support all of our students. Thank you.
Jacob.
Hello, my name is Jacob Bonebrake. I live at 1603 Danish Drive in Cedar Falls. To follow up what the previous person had said, I did come with a variation of statistics. The lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth seriously contemplate suicide at almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual youth. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth are almost 5 times as likely to have attempted suicide compared to heterosexual youth. Of all suicide attempts made by youth, lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth were almost 5 times as likely to require medical treatment. Suicide attempts by lesbian, gay, and bisexual and questioning youth are 4 to 6 times more likely to result in injury, poisoning, or overdose that requires treatment from a doctor, nurse, compared to their straight peers. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth who come from highly rejecting families are 8.4 times as likely to have attempted suicide as lesbian, gay, and bisexual peers who reported no or low levels of family rejection. Each episode of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender victimization, such as physical or verbal harassment or abuse, increases the likelihood of self-harming behavior by 2.5 times on average. I am a 2019 graduate of Cedar Falls High School and a former student at Beat Junior High School. Within the first few weeks of starting college, actually, there was an evangelical Christian man preaching about how all college students ever do is drugs and explicit things, which I choose not to repeat in this setting, but that's why God will never accept us. Whether he knew it or not, he was pushing myself and many people away who heard his message. Why would I want to go to a place where I say I am hated? But this is what everyone is talking about. Using acceptance and kindness draws interest in friendships, and hateful opinions do not. That being said, had he been preaching about welcoming college students with open arms, I may have listened, stayed, and considered his message. Before I moved to the Cedar Falls area, I grew up in a conservative town that believed heavily in the same agenda that the Cedar Valley Patriots for Christ group believes in. When I moved here, I began as an 8th grader at Pete Junior High School, where I felt more comfortable, validated, and encouraged to come out and begin my journey as a transgender male. Even then, this was still not completely normalized. The reason it's important to hold events that show the support for the LGBT community is because it's common sense that straight kids are welcome wherever they go, but LGBT kids are often told that they are welcome just to be greeted with hatred and, in many cases, violence. I just wanted to show today that the statistics I began this speech with are not just about the children who are open, they are about the children also who are not out to the world and need to be protected in our school systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Andrew Sexton in the room or in the other room? All right, moving on. Kyle.
Kyle Christensen. My pronouns are he, him, his. I live at 1822 Grand Boulevard in Cedar Falls. We all share the same vision, to create a school environment most conducive to success for our children. Let this be our true north during all of these conversations. With that said, one of my favorite quotes is, "Never waste a crisis." At times of crisis, it may feel tempting to simply return to the, I'm going to do quote, status quo, to rapidly move on. The status quo may feel safer, it feels non-confrontational, it feels easier. However, doing so also misses an opportunity to be better. Across all industries, the most transformative improvements are born from crisis. Healthcare is a great example. As a physician, I would like to share some research data consistent with what Jacob shared regarding LGBTQ youth and their current environment in our schools. In other words, the status quo. Suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst adolescents. LGBTQ junior and senior high schoolers are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. LGBT youth are at twice the risk of being bullied on school property and not feeling safe compared to their peers. More than 80% of LGBT students are harassed at school for who they are. This status quo for LGBTQ students leads to higher rates of depression, use of drugs and alcohol, increased school absences, lower GPAs, lower educational aspirations, and suicide. The status quo leads to isolation. More frankly, the status quo leads to time in my medical office, in the hospital, and tragically, in funeral homes. Never waste a crisis. So, did you know a single affirming adult in a child's life can reduce this risk of suicide by 40%? Did you know if a parent is affirming, there's a 65% reduction in suicide attempts? And did you know that schools with active GSAs are associated with a 1/2 point bump to GPAs? 4 evidence-based solutions to make schools safer and our kids healthier include intentional professional development on how to intervene in anti-LGBTQ behavior, the use of established LGBTQ inclusive material, adopt and enforce school policies protecting targeted students, and intentional support for GSAs. Let's move beyond the status quo to a future where all students have the greatest opportunity to learn and succeed.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Michael Knapp. I live at 1141 Independence Avenue in Waterloo. Both of my children attended CF High School, CF Schools, okay? My granddaughter came out as being gay during her recent high school years, so I am well aware of the bullying that takes place towards students who are LGBTQ+. The Gay Straight Alliance tries to bridge the gap of intolerance towards gays and to end bullying within their school. I find it appalling that this parent has chosen to politicize this simple gesture. I commend Pete Junior High staff for supporting the GSA's recent efforts to offer donuts and stickers to returning students in response to a bullying incident as a way to generate goodwill and acceptance for all. The complaining parent remarked that his son felt uncomfortable with the handing out of the rainbow stickers. It's too bad that both parent and son fail to recognize how uncomfortable LGBTQ students are on a daily basis, where they are excluded or actual victims of harassment, humiliation, and even physical acts of violence. The objecting parent wants to imply that the rainbow stickers turn this into a political event. I would argue that the rainbow sticker tells a LGBTQ student that they are either in a safe place or that the person is an ally and not a potential threat. It has become a symbol for those both gay and straight of support for the LGBT community, just as the cross has become a symbol for those who support Christianity or the American flag for patriotism and the United States. This could have been a learning experience for both parent and child. Instead, it became another episode of anti-gay sentiments. The "I have nothing against gays, but" is a time-worn buzz phrase for legitimizing discriminatory behavior and hate. Growing up in the South, I heard these same comments, only then they were directed towards African Americans as a way to justify segregation. Okay. This comment has the same hollow ring to it now as it did then, with only the target group being changed. It goes against both my own sense of morality and my religious beliefs. I commend the school staff for supporting the efforts of the GSA in eliminating prejudice and bullying in their school. This was not a political agenda to push gay pride, indoctrinate children, or recruit them into being homosexuals, as the objecting parent infers in his angry comments. This is about taking steps to ensure the safety of all of our children in a school setting. I urge the Cedar Falls School Board to both support staff, the GSA, and their parents to establish an accepting environment for all students in the Cedar Falls school system and to carry out its charge that the district therefore prohibits acts of intolerance, of harassment towards others because of race, color, religion, creed, ethnic background, national origin, age, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and genetic information or other factors.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman said I could call him Van, so Van.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Van Horwigi, and I'm at 1222 Austin Way in Cedar Falls. First of all, thank you for your apology. That made a big difference to what, I mean, I'm not going to change my comments much, but that made a big difference to the tenor of what I'm about to say. We've taught our child that tolerance is of the highest importance in how we treat others. The Cedar Falls schools have problems with intolerance, bullying, harassment, and assault. This doesn't make Cedar Falls different from other Iowa public schools, nor does the desire to keep these issues shielded from public view. What does stand out about the Cedar Falls School District is its reaction to public pressure. The acceptance event recently held outside Pete Junior High was misrepresented by this district, specifically through the quotes to the media after the event. I see quotes that state the event became something different than to show kindness with no additional information. This is what my daughter wrote after this event. I am so proud of my school system for finally doing something about the way people feel about being mistreated every day. I am thankful that people are finally standing up for us. I'm thankful that the music teacher that I look up to every day at school cares about me and who I am. And then one day later, after the official district response, she wrote, "Something that was supposed to be a way to embrace our differences has now been turned hateful and against us. Can I say I'm surprised? No. Who said that supporting acceptance doesn't involve kindness? Being able to come forward and make such an event should be celebrated, not discouraged. Humanity needs to grow up. We have never once said that you have to believe what we do, and we are trying to get past our differences so that we can come together as a community." End quote. There was no forced participation in this event. The reaction to this event was overwhelmingly positive. Promoting tolerance is not a political movement, despite its being labeled as such. As the school board, you have broad discretion in how policies are applied. I and others are telling you we need more from you. There are students who do not feel safe in and around our school buildings because of this intolerance. This event was a step in the right direction until the district backed down. If you need further guidance, I suggest you look to the students because they have it nailed. It's the adults that have the problem.
Sorry. I'm Angie Cox. I live at 4618 Lauren Drive here in Cedar Falls. My name is Angie Cox. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a parent of children who attend both Southdale Elementary and Pete Junior High. I wanted to thank the board for this opportunity to speak today about the donut pop-up event that took place at Pete. I speak to you today as a mother, a community member, but also as a person of privilege. As a heterosexual person, I recognize that I have privileges that those in the LGBTQ community do not. I could throw statistics at you, and I'm thankful that others have. But as a person of privilege, I want to speak to the human beings behind those statistics tonight. As a person of privilege, I don't have to question which box, male or female, that I need to check when I fill out forms. I don't have to worry about which bathroom I should go in. I don't have to fear for my safety or worry about getting my head slammed into a locker and being called names. And I don't have to worry about how not only physically painful that can be, but how humiliating that can be in front of my peers. At the donut pop-up event, a few students felt uncomfortable for a few minutes. Can you imagine what it must feel like if you were LGBTQ, or if you were a student of color, or a student with a disability, day in and day out? Can you imagine what it must feel like to check your identity, who you truly are at the door each and every day you walk into that school and conform to the norm, not feeling free to be who you are? Can you imagine how exhausting that must be? And can you imagine not feeling safe to attend school? So many times in the past, I've stayed on the sidelines myself, afraid that I would say the wrong thing and make issues worse. I've recently realized that my silence can be viewed as complacency. Silence on these issues speaks volumes, teaches our children that these behaviors are okay, and sends the wrong message. Our children, including my children, are looking up to us to show how to stand up for something that we believe in and stand up against these injustices. And I don't take that role lightly. Bullying and intolerance of differences and identities have no place in our schools or in our community. Pete and our school district need to stand up and say, we don't do that here, we don't tolerate it, and all are welcome. I commend the district policy on bullying and harassment. This behavior has no place in our district, but having it in policy is not enough. There needs to be action. We need to show our children not only with our words, but with our actions. We need to create safe and supportive spaces for all students so they can be themselves without fear and retaliation. We need to remind everyone, students, educators, and parents, that our diversity and experience makes us stronger, not weaker. Standing up to intolerance and difference is always easier when you have a friend or group of people standing with you. We must do better. We can do better.
Angie?
I understand. I want to finish one more line. Our children deserve it, and our community depends on it.
Thank you.
Well, hi, I'm Stacy Glasscock. My address is 2520 Alameda Street in Cedar Falls. I, along with my husband Dan, we have 2 daughters. One graduated last year, and she identifies with the LGBT group. I also have a 9th grader at Pete Junior High who is part of the Gay Straight Alliance, and she and I were both there the day that donuts were available, and we supplied love and support to all students, basically. So, students' mental health, well-being, and even their lives are on the line. With mental health issues and suicide rates climbing within the LGBTQ+ community, it is the school board and administrators' ethical responsibility to address this public health concern. In recent days, hundreds of people in our community have gathered and agreed upon 3 things we would like to see from the Cedar Falls School District. The first is to allow and support Gay Straight Alliance clubs in all secondary buildings. These would be in addition to, not to be replaced by anti-bullying or pro-tolerance groups. In a recent meta-analysis, having Gay Straight Alliances in schools lowers in-school victimization of LGBTQ+ students by 30%. Also, students in schools with a Gay Straight Alliance reported 50% fewer homophobic slurs on school property. Secondly, we would like to see a written statement from the district and the board demonstrating specific support for our LGBTQ+ students. I would like to thank the district administration for having accomplished this in an email to the parents of the students of Pete Junior High. The message sent was positive and specifically supported our LGBTQ students. We think it is important that this written support is made official and public to all the people in the Cedar Falls School District, not just the people with children at Pete. Lastly, we would like Iowa Safe Schools training for board members, administrators, staff, and students within the district. According to a national survey, 85% of students have heard the word gay used in a negative way at school, and 57% have heard homophobic remarks from teachers and other school staff. Iowa Safe Schools is set up to support students through training staff, administration, and students about LGBTQ+ issues. The community would like to see the board and the Cedar Falls School Administration invite Iowa Safe Schools to the district to provide training and guidance, not only to staff, administration, and the board, but also to the students. When academic success and education trajectory are at stake, when the acute and long-term mental health of these students is at stake, and when these students' lives are at stake, we must all come together and decide who we are as a community. We thank you for listening and addressing an issue that is unfortunately uncomfortable for some people. We believe Cedar Falls is not a homophobic community, and we are ready for our school district to take on the responsibility of helping to lead the way for a better life for our LGBTQ+ students and their families.
I'd like to thank you all for being here. We are going to take just a 1-minute break, and if you would like to stay and participate in the rest of our school board meeting, we would love to have you. But this would be an opportunity, if you would like to leave, it would give you that chance to leave without us all being on television at this time. So we're going to take a break, and then you can shuffle around your seats. And again, thank you all for being here. I can't tell you how much we appreciate your kind words.
Thank you.
On with our school board agenda. We are item E on our agenda, the approval of the resolution directing the sale of $10 million school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bond series 2019. Danelle.
Yes. As we continue to move forward with the new high school and the planning, we obviously are moving forward with the funding as well. And if you recall, in our last September meeting, we had approved the issuance of the $10 million, but as well as utilizing our private placement agent, D.A. Davidson. With that, we were able to accept some bids and to review those bids. And this evening we have Miss Maggie Berger from Spears Financial to review. You will note, though, as originally in the packet, we had provided some information. Unfortunately, due to the fluctuation of the market within the past few days, there is some new information that was handed out to you, so you will want to review that as Maggie goes through that information. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. Again, I'm Maggie Berger with Spear Financial. I have my colleague John Murphy with me as well. You'll be seeing John and myself as you continue down this path of funding towards the high school. Janelle has laid a letter in front of you, and this letter is on our letterhead, and it does recommend that we would sell to J.P. Morgan Chase Bank of Chicago, Illinois, with D.A. Davidson acting as the placement agent. We would accept the interest rate, the true interest cost of 1.8999% on the $10 million school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds. As you can see, again, as a blank placement, there is an interest rate of 1.900% all the way down. We do have on the second page the final debt service schedule for you. This does have a call feature on it as of June 1st of 2026. I remind the board that that is the time when you'd be able to pay the bonds off in full. You'd be able to pay the bonds off early in part. You'd be able to refinance if interest rates were lower than 1.9%. Or if at that point in time you want to do nothing but continue to just make the debt service payments as is, you have every right. The option to call is at your option only. The bonds cannot be called in by the bank at any time. So we would just continue on. You can see that on $10 million, the interest in the middle would be $1,244,837.78 if you kept the bonds till maturity and continue to pay on those. The bonds that you are issuing tonight are under your current revenue purpose statement. That revenue purpose statement will expire in 2031 per the Iowa legislature when they passed and extended the sales tax revenue. So as you can see, these will not go out past where we anticipated that revenue purpose statement to expire currently. The next page is your estimated coverage sheet. It's important to remember that based on all of the sales tax revenues that you have outstanding, the 2013, the 2016s, and now these 2019s, that you still are paying these with sales tax receipts, and you do need to maintain a coverage factor of 1.2 times the amount of receipts that you bring in. We've given you the sales tax receipts, and I do still call this estimated, and the reason is although the rates are locked in on your debt today, your sales tax receipts are still estimated. We're not showing any growth in these, and so I want to make sure that everyone understands as your sales tax receipts grow over time, this coverage factor should look better each and every year. We also, as you can see, we're not even getting close to the 1.2%. And the reason that we're not getting close to that 1.2 times is because we know we have additional sales tax revenue bonds that need to be issued for this project sometime down the road as we work with the administration and all of you to determine when the best time to sell those is. So we needed to leave some room in there so that we can bring on additional debt for the high school project under the sales tax revenue portion of your receipts. And then the very last page, just as Danelle had mentioned, we've given you a sources and uses page, but the actual last page is a look at the U.S. Department of Treasury and the daily Treasury yield curves. So again, just as this is a private placement done with a bank will offer us a 24-hour rate lock, which means you have to meet within 24 hours. So as of Thursday, when they were giving us price quotes, they were at about a 180. As you can see on the last 4 days, October 8th through October 11th, the 10-year Treasury did go up by 20 basis points, so it went up 0.2%. So we're happy that we were only able to have to absorb from a 180 to a 190. But you can tell that that is a difference, and we really haven't seen that type of fluctuation in the Treasury in quite some time. There's just a lot going on in the market that really sent that into influx. So I do want to point out that as we have been talking to the district, we were estimating that this interest rate could be as high as 3%. And I want to remind you that we've been talking about this for many, many months, and that is why. So interest rates really in the spring, had we done this in the springtime of 2019, probably and definitely would have been higher than with the rates that we're seeing today. So we are very happy with the results, even though a little bit higher than what we were hoping for on Thursday when we were getting those initial bank thoughts. So there were 7 lenders that were giving you proposals. So we did hear from 7 lenders. All of the other lenders that we had heard from on Thursday were above the 2% mark, some even going up to 3.25%. We did have mainly nationwide banks, which does not surprise us at $10 million. We did have 2 banks locally or regionally that did participate in that proposal, but they were significantly higher than this 1.9 that we're seeing today. So with that, I would answer any questions that you would have, but we would recommend that you would sell the $10 million of school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bond series 2019 to J.P. Morgan Chase of Chicago, Illinois at a true interest cost of 1.8999%.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Directors approve the resolution directing the sale of $10 million of school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bond series 2019 to J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, true interest cost of 1.8999%, maturity June 1st, 2030, as presented.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Susie. Now questions and comments.
So just some questions. I believe it's a clerical error, but just from our documentation, on the coverage ratio sheet, it appears that in 2023,
correct.
That's a clerical error, right?
Actually, it is not, and I should have pointed that out. My apologies. In 2023, the district is set to pay off the 2013 bonds. If you will recall, the 2013 bonds do have a debt service reserve fund of $995,000. That money will need to be inputted into your sales tax revenue pot so that you can pay that final payment. So that payment is about $973,000, but you actually have $995 on reserve. The 2016 bonds did not have a reserve fund, and the 2019s do not have a reserve fund as well.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's money that we already have.
It is money that you already have.
We're just moving it from the reserve column to the unreserved column.
That is correct. Okay. You will not need to have that on reserve anymore. And technically, from the bond resolution of 2013, it states that you must use those dollars to make that final payment.
Okay, great. Great. If you could find a way for that just to appear, that would make it much more attractive. And then you stated as well that these are callable in 2026.
That is correct.
So is that a feature that we end up paying more for or paying less for from when banks are looking at our bonds?
Yeah, so had the city or had the district not had a callable factor, they would have given you a little bit of a discount. We don't believe in selling bonds that are not callable when they have this maturity that's this length. If we sell a 3-year or a 5-year bond, sometimes we can get on board with them not being callable. But had you issued the bonds at any call date sooner than that, you would have paid a higher interest rate. And the reason is they want to make sure, these are investments, these are municipal investments, they want to make sure that they're going to hold onto that investment for a time and that they're not going to have to reinvest $10 million in something else 1 year down the road. They are in it to make money off of their investment, and so they are giving you, they gave you a tiered rate system. We did go with the 2026 call date. Had we negotiated these or sold these bonds competitively, The call date would have been 2027 per the industry standards. So we actually believe the bank was giving us a better call date and even a little bit a lower interest rate to do that. So.
Oh, I think that helps answer my next question, which was where did the 2026 come from? And that was part of the bid package that JP Morgan put together.
Correct. What the bid package that they put together in the investor package that went out, and Danelle did go through that, I think, at the September 23rd meeting for you. As part of that investor package, we noted that the bonds really could become callable at 25 or after, but give us your options. And that's where we have some flexibility when we're negotiating on a bank placement, is to kind of find out what that option is. And so the option was given that it could be a 2026 call for the 1.9%, which seemed a little bit more in line with where we were hoping to get interest rates for today. So industry standard, if you're talking about a 10-year bond, you're usually talking about halfway plus 1 or 2 years. So really, again, had we gone out and done a negotiated or competitive sale, we even think that the call date would have been out a little bit further. That's where the underwriters would have wanted to see that.
Okay.
Are there others that might have a question? Alan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm fine now.
Okay, so your question was answered. Any, Jeff, Jenny?
Jeff asked all the questions I was
Okay,
going to
that-
ask.
well, I wanted to just make sure.
Do I get one more? Is that okay?
I'm sure I'm
It's
sure
probably
my
one I had,
question
so
as
Jeff,
well.
go ahead.
Jenny, it's
Yeah.
Jenny and I's question. Go ahead and ask.
Yep, please, Jeff, thank you.
Thank you. No. Are property taxes going to go up as a result of the issuing this bond?
The answer to that question is no. These are not general obligation bonds. These are sales tax revenue. So this is the 1 cent that is statewide and being calculated based on your student population.
So we're not asking for an additional $10 million?
No. You are not asking for an additional $10 million out of what you voted on the referendum. This is completely separate and done as a sales tax revenue bond.
Okay.
And I think important to note, because this has been a comment made every time we've met for the last couple of months, that this is also part of the general obligation bond of $69.9 million that the community agreed for a new high school, and we said we would add in about 43-point-something million to make up the difference of the construction of that property. So this is the first $10 million of that $43 million of 1 cent sales tax the district said we would use to offset the overall tax impact of that new building.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, and it is a roll call vote.
Yes, Ms. Hassman, or excuse me, Mr. Hassman.
Yes.
Ms. Coyle.
Yes.
Dr. Heiserkamp.
Yes.
Ms. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Leeper.
Yes.
Mr. Orvis.
Yes.
Ms. Walpert.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion's carried. Moving on now to item F, approval of the certified annual report. Danelle.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
So this evening, I'm going to be reviewing the certified annual report for 18-19. If you recall, the certified annual report is our financial data. It is a required report that we have each year for the Iowa Public Schools as well as the area education. It is a requirement of the Iowa Department of Education, and it's due on September 15th. In regards to that, we also are included is the CAR, is the Special Education Report, the SES, and that is which determines our revenue and expenditures associated with our special education program. So it is within the CAR itself. So to make things a little bit easier this evening, I took a look at the 3 funds in which we kind of categorize these in, and it's easier to look at them as silos. We currently have governmental funds, which includes our general fund, and that includes obviously our special education, our consortium, our teacher leadership, and so on. We also have our special revenue fund, so when I'm talking about the governmental funds, that includes our student activity as well as our management fund, and then other district support trust. We also have within that governmental fund also is the capital projects, which would be our GO bonds, also the SAVE and physical plant and levy, and then our debt service. In our second silo then, we would have the proprietary funds, which would be our enterprise funds, which is our nutrition account, as well as then our fiduciary funds, which is our private purpose trust, which is our student scholarships, and then our agencies. I'll remind you as I go through, because I know this is quite a large slide in regards to the funds all about, but it's easier to look at them as silos. So, In regards to definitions, when I talk about the definitions, I'll talk about total assets, which is just a reminder, cash plus our receivables plus our inventory on hand. And then we also have our fund balance, which is our total assets minus any of our payables, accrued expenses that are due. So, in regards to our governmental fund, we'll start with our general fund. You'll notice that our total assets and our fund balance did slip a little bit, about approximately $900,000. As a recall, this is a reminder that cash balance does not reflect the changes in the district authority budget. It's actually just the cash on hand to pay our bills. So, with as a reminder, we had increased enrollment. We are educating more students at a budget in which we have not received that specific funding. So we are issuing those payments at that particular time, but yet have not received that funding specifically for that. It does not impact our budget authority. It's just that cash at hand. We have, and the board has approved previously, some cash reserve funds, which we did again ask for fiscal 20, and in anticipation of the increased enrollment. So we are trying to get that cash balance to tick up a little bit, as you can see, but again, for this particular fiscal year, it did decrease by $900,000 this year.
Danelle, can we expect this trend as we continue to grow as a district? Is this what we're going to expect to see year to year?
We'll have to flatten that out, and some of that is we've been fairly conservative with some of our cash reserve levies. 3 years ago, we had a kind of an amount that we split into half to say we would kind of carve that out over 2 years. We know probably as we look to the future, we're probably going to have to go with a little higher cash reserve just because we have the authority, but our cash balances are starting to slide a little bit more. So the most important factor is the authority, not necessarily the cash, but it's going to be a time where we're going to have to add those cash balances up a little bit higher.
Okay. Oh, goodness, excuse me. I hit the wrong button. Next slide. In regards to the general fund revenue expenditures, you'll see that for fiscal 19, we had revenues of $59 million, and we did have expenditures for $60 million. And again, this goes to, in regards to our spending authority, we have that maximum budget in which we can utilize. So that is the reason that there are items in which we can expend more than we actually have those revenues. We have those reserves in place. So the next is just a comparison for our revenue. You'll see that the breakdown of property tax, state, and miscellaneous income, you'll see that that's pretty steady for our property tax at 35%. Our state is the 54%, so for every dollar it's 54 cents. And then you have your miscellaneous income, which is your federal dollars, at approximately about 10%. It's pretty comparable to last year. We also have then our general fund comparison. This is just a little bit more of a breakdown. You'll see that our property tax is about $21 million. We have then the state aid at $23 million. What I'd like to address is our state categoricals. Those are actually designated funds, and those examples would be our 4-year-old preschool, teacher salary supplement, as well as teacher leadership compensation, professional development. Those are designated funds in which we have to utilize for those particular projects. As well as then we have our AEA flow-through, which is an obligation of the district to issue those dollars to the AEA. And then again, you have your miscellaneous income, which would be your federal dollars, and any other miscellaneous local revenue in which we would receive. This again is just another breakdown in regards to miscellaneous income. You'll see that our local has stayed pretty steady. It's in regards to, then we also have our state, which is about $240,000, and then we have our federal at $1.8 million. You'll see that there is quite a jump in regards to fiscal 17 to fiscal 19. And the reason for that in regards to our state is because at that point, the TLC grant or the TLC Teacher Leadership Committee funds were considered a grant, and that was considered miscellaneous income for fiscal 17. That has now gone into the categoricals, and you'll see that within those particular dollars. So it's just shifted in regards to how those dollars look. So it looks skewed, but those dollars are still coming within the district and are just categorized differently. This gives you a breakdown of our federal funding. You can see from the changes, our Head Start was down a little bit as regards to our Part B. We did have some increases in our Perkins and our Title I. You'll also see some carryover in which we had that was down from the previous year. You'll also see our Title II had a slight increase, and then we had Title III. I do see that there is a data error in regards to that. It is Title IV, not Title VI. Those numbers tend to get mixed up a little bit. That is new for fiscal 19, but it is a replacement for Title VI. It's just a little bit different funding stream. So that's why there were no dollars associated to that in fiscal 18. And then we have our other miscellaneous grants, none for fiscal 19. But the big one I want to take a look at is our Medicaid. Our Medicaid obviously impacts our special education deficit, which those dollars flow through, and in regards to associated with those particular students with special needs. This particular year for fiscal 19, those dollars were down approximately $132,000, which gave us a total of about $83,000 down that we were for fiscal 19 for our federal funding.
Was that because of a change in student population, or?
It's a combination of different factors, with the primary factor being the reimbursable claims that we can reimburse for based on the student needs. So there's different claims and different types of claims. So it just goes back to the number of reimbursable claims that we can have.
So were those limited? I mean, were some of what we were being reimbursed for taken away?
Yes, either student need it wasn't necessary to have that in place anymore, or it could have been that there was a few students that transitioned away from the district or graduated and no longer received some of those high claim, high cost reimbursable Medicaid services.
Thanks.
Good question.
So
Okay.
there aren't students going unserved here because we're in a deficit?
No. It just means that we have less federal Medicaid dollars that we claimed back for.
Yes.
Or were able to claim back for, is a better way to describe that.
Great questions. This is just a breakdown in regards to our general fund revenue. It gives you an overview. For every dollar, the state, 54 cents. Then we have our 35 cents for our local property tax from our citizens. And then we have our remainder, which is our federal and our local, about 11 cents. This is very difficult to read and difficult to see, but this is just a graph. It's a lot of information in a short amount, in a little picture. But with that, I wanted to show that in reviewing instructional, if you review the instruction guidance, health services, media services, instructional technology and assessments, about 75% of that is instructional. The remainder are those other categories. So 75% of that is for our instructional services. So leaving the general fund and going into our special education supplement, this is a report in which it is specifically for our special needs children. Children are identified with an individual education plan, an IEP, and it's developed for each unique student. The special education program is a part of the foundation formula, and it weighs for students with IEPs. So it is a funding formula based on excess costs for those particular levels of students. So students are first general education students, and then we have that additional funding, as I had just addressed, in regards to those particular weightings. So for all students for fiscal 19, we had a general program cost of $6,738 for the additional weighting. Then for our level 1, level 2 for funding purposes, and level 3, you can see those additional dollars as we receive those for those particular funds and for those particular levels. So some of the costs that are outlined for the students in the IEP are direct costs. Those would be our salary and benefits for those special education teachers, as well as our paraeducators for the one-on-one or individual paraeducators for special education students. We also have staff development, specialized student physical education, travel and training, some modifications, and then some specialized supplies or equipment. A good example for specialized supplies or equipment would be our individuals receive a one-on-one computer at the high school. There are individuals that may have auditory needs that may need special programs or hardware to be able to utilize those particular pieces of equipment. That would be a specialized special ed expense that we would show as a special education expense. Some additional costs that are associated with this would be then the health services. We'd have some specialized transportation. Regular transportation obviously is not included then that. That would be specialized transportation. And then we would have the tuition to other districts for those Cedar Falls Community School students that are served in other education facilities, as well as then there's some administrative costs, very minimal, and those are specific to our River Hills and Lead Center at Waverly. So as a review for the special education supplement, we had 583 resident students for Cedar Falls Community Schools. 17 of those students are served by other schools and agencies. So that's a list of those particular 17 different resident students at those particular facilities. Cedar Falls also served 76 out-of-district students, and the majority of those are open enrolled students. Those would be tuition in dollars that we would receive from those particular schools, and they are listed in that particular for those schools associated with that. So taking a look at give you a little picture. Again, this is serving at least one day within our facilities or with our school district. Again, we had 583. If I take note, that's up about 45 students from fiscal 18. We had the individuals have tuitioned out those students that are within other districts. Cedar Falls students being supported by other districts is 17, which is about down 3. And then we had 76 for tuition in, which is up approximately 2 from last year.
So if they're being served in another district, Cedar Falls students served in another district, is it because they're open and enrolled out, or is it because we don't have the programming to meet their need, or both?
Could be a combination of any of those. So we have some that might be in a placement, some might be in a facility that meets their needs better than what we could provide. There's multiple different reasons. Also, open enrollment out could be one of the factors as well.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Next slide then is those resident students served within Cedar Falls Community Schools. This gives you a breakdown of that level funding that I was talking about earlier in the slides, the level 1, level 2, and level 3 funding. Of the 583 students, we had 354 that were identified as level 1 for that funding stream, as well as then 151 for level 2 and 78 for level 3. So you can see the fluctuation in those particular counts on a given year. And then our resident students tuitioned out of those 18 students, and you'll see that there's a discrepancy between 18 and 17, as I had discussed earlier, and that's because they have served in at least one day of the school year. There are times that those levels change, and so that's why there is a discrepancy in the 17 to 18. We had 6 in level 1, we had 2 in level 2, and then 10 in level 3. So getting to our funding, this is specifically in regards to funding versus actual. And as you'll see, for fiscal 19, we had student count of 562, and that was funding for 562, but we actually served 601 students within the Cedar Falls Community Schools. So that is a normal trend. I'll have to say in fiscal 18, that is an anomaly to have funding, one more funding than we actually served in the Cedar Falls district. So that is very odd. I have never seen that before. It did not surprise me that our funding was less than actually what was served in the district for fiscal 19 this year. So our revenue comparison, this would be just a snapshot of that. You'll see that those dollars flow from student count tuition in. Those are the dollars that we receive for those students that are not Cedar Falls Community School District students from other districts. We have our Medicaid, that is a big funding source, as well as then Part B, TSS, and non-public. And then our expenditure comparison, this is a lot of information in a little bit of a graph. It's hard to see sometimes. There are definitely salaries in regards to benefits. Also our travel, supplies, and contracted services are lumped into, I believe it's the tan colored from this view. And then also the transportation, GPE, and tuition out, so our expenditures. So in summary, for the SES, we had 10.92 in revenues, total receipts, and we had expenditures of 11.6, which obviously that is a deficit of $691,194. That is slightly up, but if you recall in a few slides previously, we were down within our federal funding for our Medicaid, which it was about approximately $132,000, which would have assisted in this particular deficit, unfortunately, which then we would have been about approximately $100,000 up from fiscal 18. So, but the current deficit is $691,000.
So this is where it goes back to, I think, Sasha's question before. And this is what we say every year with the federal and the state students with special needs deficit. What happens here is the allocations per student per level have not changed over the course of the last 10 to 12 years. I think the last time they changed was roughly 12 years ago. Both the federal and the state government know that they are not able to fund or not able to provide the dollars associated with the costs necessary to run the programs for the students and their needs effectively and at the appropriate levels. So this is the one area within school finance that if you run a deficit, you can recoup those dollars because they say we know the majority of districts are going to run a deficit based on the student needs, based on the funding sources, both at the federal and the state levels. So it's not a matter of saying there's students that aren't having their needs met. What's happening is we aren't getting the funding at the level that we are allocating resources to meet the needs of our students. So there's a deficit spending, and there's a part of state code that says then you can recoup those dollars as SBRC spending authority allowable growth.
I do have one quick question. I know this is concerning special education, but in general, we've heard talk about and confusion about whether or not students who open enroll into Cedar Falls are a net financial liability or an asset, or either one? Is it more or less a break even? Or
actually, when you bill out special education costs for students that are either open enrolled or tuitioned in, they're actually at cost. So it's not a matter of the weighting. Actually, and again, this is where it gets kind of interesting and unique to describe. So if you have a resident student that might be a weighted level 2, you get a certain amount of dollars, but you may expend a great deal more, and those are dollars where the deficit comes from. But actually, if you have that same student that's level 2, that's actually tuitioned in or open enrolled in, you bill the actual cost to the resident district for those services. So it's a little bit nuanced with some little specifics in Iowa code, but it's actually more beneficial to have those students open enrolled in for the actual cost purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
And how do we generate the cash to cover that gap?
That comes about from when we set our budgeting process to go through our cash reserving, because this is a cash reserve process, to be able to say we have the authority, do we generate a cash reserve levy to be able to generate the cash? Because again, as we looked at with the general fund dollars and the cash associated with our general fund, part of that is the special education components and spending authority.
So if I may to be more specific, to repeat a question before, does that impact our property taxes?
That would, yes, because cash reserve levies have an impact on the property tax levy rate.
So because of the deficit of funds that we do not receive from the federal or the state government, it is forced onto our local property tax owners to cover that gap so that we can serve all of our students.
That is a correct statement.
Okay.
And this has happened year after year after year after year.
Yes.
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 Correct.
Any?
Okay, we can continue to move on. The next slide was just a breakdown in regards to our special education staff. Even though it indicates our paraprofessionals 109 and our teachers at 60.5, we obviously have others, individuals that are serving even though they may not be listed on this, and they're providing those assistance as needed for those particular students. So just an overview. So the next slide is in regards to our spending authority, and I had mentioned that earlier. And It's in regards to, I'd like to look at it as a credit card. So it's a credit card limit in which we have that budget authority. It includes our cash on hand, our state aid, our property tax, and our miscellaneous income. But then again, it's our total amount the district can legally spend during that fiscal year, and that's why I like to look at it as a credit card. As well as then it's your authorized unspent balance, which is last year's amount, add any revenues, subtract any expenses, that's your final spending authority, actual authorized unspent balance. So ISB has developed some key financials and some snapshots of those particulars that show the district's financial health. And those key financials are certified enrollment, as well as financial solvency ratio, the unspent balance authority, as well as then the annual unspent balance, our budget authority ratio. So we'll take a look at our certified enrollment. One of the fantastic things is our enrollment continues to trend up. We did have a blip in fiscal 17, but as that enrollment continues to grow, obviously that funding is always in arrears. But again, for certified enrollment for this year, no final numbers yet, but approximately 120 students for fiscal 20, so which is fantastic. But it also talks about the enrollment funding delay. So as I spoke earlier in regards to we're educating those students, you'll see that funding delay, we have not received that or have that authority to utilize those dollars for approximately 720 for fiscal 19. And again, this would impact obviously fiscal 20, looking ahead for the future with those increased enrollment with approximately 120 kids, which is about $825,000. So, which is a good thing.
So the good news is that next year we'll get another $825,000 for our educational year. The bad news is if our enrollment goes up, we don't get any extra for that until the year after that.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. So one of the key financials, again, is our financial solvency ratio. And you'll note that the solvency ratio, again, did decline this year, but that is a direct result of the cash on hand. Obviously, we had discussed that cash reserve earlier, and that is regarding our cash on hand for itself. ISB has recommended that a minimum of 5%. The district, from what I understand, has set a goal at 10%. We currently are above that ISB recommendation, which is at 6.97%.
Question about that one.
Sure.
So my understanding is we also don't want to go to the other extreme either, that if we have a ratio up near 15%, that means we're sitting on a lot of cash that we really either should not be collecting or should be finding a way to spend on our students. Is that correct?
What? No. Yep.
Yes. And when we were talking several years ago, we knew that our solvency ratio was a little high. But we also know that at that time we were looking with no cash reserve levies or very limited cash reserve levies, and we tried to keep that those rates as low as we possibly could. Now, as we look at the overall enrollment growth and some of the dollars that are a year in arrears, we're going to have to adjust some of those percentage of cash reserve levies to make sure we build those cash balances back up. Again, they're still higher than what the ISAB recommends, but I think our comfort level would be up in that 8 to 9% range, closer to 10%. But certainly, if you go up there around that 13 to 14%, it's a little too high. It means you have too much cash in the bank.
And the other extreme would be we wouldn't have cash if needed for contingencies that we weren't.
That's exactly right. Different emergencies and contingencies, and again, the most important aspect is our unspent balance spending authority. And if you have that, which we have, a healthy spending authority, yep. You can always generate the cash necessary.
Good.
As Dr. Petit indicated, for our unspent budget authority, you'll see that for fiscal 19, it did drop a little bit again. It dropped about $330,000 in regards to our assigned, as well as then our unassigned dropped approximately about $170,000, and that again is our categoricals, what those designated funds that we have in regards to that. And again, that's your 4-year-old preschool, your teacher salary supplement, those particular items. Also, our unspent budget authority ratio, you'll see that that has declined slightly. For fiscal 19, it did decline to 10.91, and then for our unassigned would be 10.40, which we continue to make that goal of 10% in which we've set for our district. And then we have the general fund annual unspent budget ratio, which you'll see that is in regards to basically where you're breaking even. For fiscal 19, we did increase. In fiscal 18, we did have a negative 1.45. For fiscal 19, we did increase to negative 0.55. So we're getting closer to that breaking even point. So I've spoke a lot about in regards to the general fund specifically, our special education, our Fund 10, as well as then our consortium and our teacher salary supplement. Now we're going to be continuing with our governmental fund for our special revenue funds. These will go rather quickly unless you have several questions that you may have. But in regards to our activity fund, you'll see that our total assets and our fund balance did slightly go up from the previous year, as well as then our revenues, expenditures. We pretty much took in exactly what we expended for that particular year, so it went up a little bit. Our management fund, if you recall, is for our liability, auto and property and casualty insurance. You'll see that this is a tick down, and it was reduced as we had reduced our revenue, and that was. And we also had some increases in our premium. But this was expected, this was a planned, as we continue to use those particular fund balances. You'll see that the revenue and expenditures show that particular statement in regards to the expenditures are up a little bit, and our revenue is down just a tad. And again, this will show again for fiscal 20 as we move forward, as this was a plan to utilize those particular funds that we have within this fund balance. Then we have our district support trust funds. Again, we have approximately $20,000 within that for total assets and fund balances. For our capital projects, this was our general obligation bond for our for the district Aldrich, as well as the North Cedar and Orchard Hill projects. You'll see in fiscal 17, obviously those were when the funds were received. We had then for fiscal 18 utilizing those dollars, and then as we continue to utilize those dollars, that fund balance and will eventually be zero until we have to utilize this particular fund again. You'll see that the revenue and expenditures correlate with that particular fund balance and utilizing of those funds. This is a sales and service tax, which was our SAVE, Fund 33. You'll note that our total assets and fund balance is, and then we have our available balance. As Maggie indicated earlier, we have $995,000 in reserves, and so you'll see that difference in that availability within those particular funds and why. You'll note also that this particular fund did drop slightly, and that is because we did reserve specific funds from this for our North Cedar and Orchard Hill remodel. So they were earmarked for those particular projects. This is the revenue and expenditures of those particular projects for fiscal 19, and you'll see that our revenues obviously are a tad lower than our expenditures, but again, those dollars were earmarked for those particular projects at North Cedar and Orchard Hill.
So, sorry.
Yeah,
so
nope, that's okay.
So our sales tax, this is driven by sales tax, right?
That is correct. So
did the state's sales tax receipts actually drop in the 18-19 period? Because I see ours went from what I would expect is a year over year, just increase in sales tax revenue. Did it?
No.
No, it didn't, and this is cash dollars, so when we refinance, there's some different things that happen with the cash balances. So you'll see the big spike in 13-14, that was where we did a levy. So these are cash balances, not necessarily actual revenue generated from just that sales tax.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's just an important source of revenue for us to do infrastructure projects, and I'd like to I'd like to feel like it's going up every year because our needs continue to increase.
Am I right that we're also starting to follow online purchases too and collect sales tax on those that we hadn't been recently, so I would hope that that would bring it up considerably, right?
Yes, I'm not sure that was across the board, but I think there's some specific items that are purchased online that now are rolled into that online sales tax revenue for the state.
As we move forward, this is our physical plant and equipment levy. You'll see that our fund balance slightly dropped a little bit in regards to our cash balances. But you'll see that our revenues and our expenditures were about the same for this particular year. We took in exactly about the same as we expended for fiscal 19. I do want to notate in regards to fiscal 18 why that flux and change versus how it exceeded and then decreased substantially. That was an accounting requirement per the Department of Education in regards to our UNI purchase. It was some changing in regards to that accounting, so we had to show those particular revenues and expenditures in this particular fund and then remove those particular things. So you'll see that there's a influx in that. So why the change, and it's not because we're not being funded appropriately. And then our debt levy service, which is obviously our debt service for those particular general obligation and revenue bonds in which we have. This is our total assets, which is about 20,000 that we have. That is specifically a combination of our sinking fund transfers that we do on a monthly basis, as well as then some interest and then those tax receipts for that particular fund. This is your revenue and expenditures. We usually utilize 2 payments per year, and then we do have those that revenue flow stream, which we take in and the same as we have paid out. So I've gotten through the general fund. Now it's on to the proprietary fund. That would be our enterprise fund, and that is our school nutrition and our high school student coffee shop. As you can see, our food service account in regards to our fund balance, it did drop just a tad, not much, but you will see there is a dotted line in there, and that is because of the fund balance without pension. We wanted to make sure you were aware of that change. That was a GASB change back in fiscal 15 that we were required to show that. So we wanted to ensure that with that drop, you would see that if there was actually without the pension, you can see that fund balance as is. But this is a testament to the team. They've done a fantastic job. Our revenues and their expenditures are about the same for this particular year. We did have expenditures were up a slight, and revenues were down a little bit, but our fund balance continues to be a positive fund balance. And we continue with our fiduciary funds, which would be our miscellaneous student scholarships and then our agency funds. And you'll see that our private purpose trust funds, we have approximately about $17,000 in regards to total assets and fund balance. And then we have our agency fund, which there are no fund balances because we are the fiscal agent. We hold those funds. And the majority of those funds would be our River Hills, which we are the fiscal agent, and it's a flow through. So we would issue those payments to that particular agency as needed. I have to say thank you to Janice Speck and Carrie DeBerg and Jill White, and actually our entire business team. This is a 3-month process of preparing information and gathering information and ensure it's correct prior to submitting. Like I said, September 15th is the deadline. There is no wiggle room with that. And I have to say, I'm proud to say we were able to complete this and certify this prior to the 15th. So thank you to all of them. They did a fantastic job this year and definitely speaks volume of our team. So is there any other questions that you may have? A lot of information.
A lot of information. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Cedar Falls Board of Directors approve the 2018-19 Certified Annual Report, Special Education Supplement, and submit a request to the School Budget Review Committee to see allowable growth and supplemental aid for the negative special education balance of $691,193.93 as presented.
Thank you, Susie. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Jenny Leeper. Any questions or comments? Additional questions or comments? Hearing none. Sasha?
I was just going to say thank you, Danelle, for
Oh, sure.
that presentation, for your work also.
Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, and I'll echo what Sasha just said. Thank you for your team. A great presentation, easy for us to follow, and just thank you for all the effort everyone puts into this.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Moving on now, hate to put you back on the
I know.
spot. The approval of SBRC, application for the LEP, modified allowable growth.
Well, I promise this one will not be as long. So this is a yearly request in regards to our limited English proficiency, which is our LEP. It is supplemental allowable growth request. In reviewing for fiscal 19, we served a number of students. We served 149 students, which if you take a look at previously, in the previous year, we served 108 students for LEP. We had a number of teachers of 3. We served over 30 languages, which is amazing and definitely speaks volumes to our community in regards to, that's an increase of about 8 from the previous year. We had 22 previously. So our total percentage of LEP students for certified enrollment was 2.3%. With that said, we do have obviously expenditures for the LEP services, and the majority, obviously all of them, are for our instruction. It is our salaries and our benefits, and then obviously any other supplies that we may have. For fiscal 19, we had approximately $259,213 in which we used for expenditures for LEP services. With the funding that we receive for our total weighted funding, we had $131,000 for our resources. We had other resources of $22,000, and then we had our MAG, which is $16,305 for a total revenue source of $170,000. You'll see that there is a difference of a maximum allowable growth and request of $88,000, in which requesting of the board to approve to move forward with requesting that from the SBRC of $88,000. Is there any questions that you may have?
One question I'd have would be, relative, I know that LEP funding never really matches our needs. Relative to recommendations by national organizations and say relative to what other schools are able to do in the state, can you give us a sense of, say, how many minutes students might be getting services and how that differs from recommendations? I've caught you off guard on that one, I'm sorry, because that's probably a pretty lot of
yeah,
research
that's
on
a
that,
big
but-
question because, it depends on the student needs. It's similar to, students with special needs with IEP services. So we have some that might be in year number 5 that really are more supplemental services that might not be as intensive, but we might have a first year, second, or a first year in the program kindergartner that speaks no English. So it's really going to be much more time intensive with those students. We do know we have some individual one-on-one programming. We have some small group programming, some push-in programming, some pull-out programming. So it's kind of hard to say it's equal here with time versus not equal here with time.
Right. An equity type question, what the students actually need as opposed to equality.
Exactly, because again, there's going to be a student that might come here from a family that's been hired at UNI that speaks, pick your language, Arabic, that might actually also speak fluent English, but they'd be in the first year program but not need as many supports. So it's really dependent on the student needs.
Good question.
Of those 3 teachers, I assume that they're floating between schools. Are they dedicated to primary and or secondary? How does the split there look?
Yeah, I'm looking at Pam for that one.
That one varies depending on the students and their needs. So this year, Jill's in charge of the ELL, and Sarah Waite used to teach all of the secondary. I don't know that she's doing that this year. I can't guarantee it. We have more of the student needs in our elementary than we do secondary. What we do is we look at the student load, and then we kind of move teachers around based on that.
Good question. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation?
I move that the Cedar Falls Board of Directors approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee for excess limited English proficient LEP students students cost in the amount of $88,686.24.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Alan. Any other questions or comments?
This is not toward LEP, but didn't we have an SBRC request for needs at Aldrich with the opening of the new building? And if so, I apologize if I don't recall the status of that. Were we successful in that request?
Yeah, so there are two parts to that request, and it goes back, I think Doug and I went down there last September sometime. And there's two parts to that. Number one, the startup costs, which were granted. They did not approve the startup costs for books, staffing, or not staffing, but outfitting the media center, some of our reading curriculum and things like that, which we, I think, argued fervently for, but their framework at the SBRC was those should be allocated across your district due to the fact that your enrollment might be increasing, but it's not increasing to the point where you need to fully staff a library with books and everything else for a brand new 400 student elementary. And our argument was, well, you can't really take maybe a classroom section of books from elementary A to move them to Aldrich Elementary and subdivide that from 25 books down to 15 books. So it is actually startup costs, but they denied that. So that was roughly about $250,000 that we were hopeful. We weren't necessarily optimistic because of their past practice on that, but we decided to at least present that as an argument, even though it wasn't successful.
Good question. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on now to the superintendent's report, item H on the agenda.
Yeah, just a couple different items. The ISAB State Convention, November 20th and 21st, and certainly would like to have all of our board members attend that. Certified enrollment, which we talked about, and Danelle hit on that just a bit ago. It looks like, and again, it kind of fluctuates based on other districts pre-populating their data and how that cross-references, but roughly 126 to 127 students increase, which would increase the amount of dollars in arrears up to about $900,000. But again, it's one of those aspects where it's really exciting as a growing district and certainly a district of choice. Questions
for Andy? Hearing none, questions or comments or concerns from board members? I'd like to thank you for your comments tonight. I greatly appreciate it. Those that were in attendance and those that stayed, we have a scout in the room, so thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm trying to think of what badge you're trying to earn. Citizen in government, right? Is that it? Okay. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you for being here. We greatly appreciate it.
Andy, I would echo Joyce's comments. Thank you for your comment that preceded the community input tonight, and I would just strongly recommend that as an administrative team that we look for opportunities for further professional development. I think the suggestion tonight with regard to Iowa Safe Schools, they do fantastic work all across the state. This is what they do well. They are allies and friends of this district and all districts, and I highly recommend that we look as a district ways in which to increase some learning and some conversation around the issues tonight. And I would just also be willing to be a part of any and all of those discussions to the extent that I can be helpful.
Greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Andy, I want to thank both you and Bill. I know it's been a rough couple of weeks. I think as a district, again, we have addressed and learned a lot of things. It's a learning moment for us as well as a district, so I want to thank both of you for taking that on. Again, I want to also thank all the people who came tonight. I think it was great to see so many people in the room just passionate about supporting our students. A lot of times we see maybe people here who are not necessarily supporting something, but here against something. So I think it was great for us to see our community rally around our students. And also, just a reminder for all of our parents, it's really important that we are modeling kindness, grace, tolerance as, we are active in our lives. So again, for all of our parents out there, tolerance, kindness, acceptance doesn't necessarily mean agreement. So we should have the room to have civil discourse about things that we don't necessarily agree on, but we can still be tolerant and kind to each other because, you know, we still have a lot of similarities just as human beings on the planet here. So I hope for all of us it can be an opportunity for dialogue, for learning, and if we don't try and learn about each other, then it's really hard to ever get to a place of understanding. So again, an opportunity for all of us, hopefully.
Good comments. Thank you. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved by Susie Hines. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jenny Leeper. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.